Happy birthday to His Holiness. Amazing to be 86 years old and look like he's 56 or so. But of course, the reason for that is that there's embodiment of love, embodiment of compassion. He's the embodiment. If we're so fortunate to have somebody like that to take a look at. There's not an atom of his body that's in conflict. He basically is at peace because of such a beautiful, open mind. I don't know, how much you guys know, but of course, His Holiness, was placed in charge of the country of Tibet when he was 13 years old. So if you can imagine at 13 years old having to govern what's going on, as well as the spiritual and temporal head is just beyond belief for a 13-year-old to be taking that, especially at the time when this was just at the beginning of the Chinese coming into Tibet. Now it's not 1959. I believe this was probably more like in 51 or so. But to be able to take that on and then to move on and in 1959 and leave the country and go to India, which was kind enough to offer him the ability to live there and create homes, and they've built monasteries there. But we've been in these discussions about entering the Mahayana path. And what we're finding is that here we have the embodiment there that is showing us exactly what it means. He was amazed by the fact that when the Chinese first came into Tibet, that they were crying, thinking that they were liberating the country. They had been brainwashed to such a degree in creating harm and killing, destroying monasteries, killing, raping nuns, and taking the sacred texts, which Tibetans leave only up in high places, and making them use those for toilet paper to stand on, whatever it might be. And yet, I've been lucky enough since the beginning of the 70s to have been around His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and have never heard him say anything bad about the Chinese or anybody else. Equanimity. We have somebody just says something bad to us or talks about us, and we feel, anger, hatred, dislike, for that person. These are entire nation of billions of people coming in and overtaking. Can you imagine somebody taking our house from us, from doing something to our family members? And yet he practiced, love and peace and compassion. I think if you listen to His Holiness, he says, "My religion is kindness." Well, the kindness is not isolated kindness. It's easy to be kind, it's easy for us to maybe be kind to His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. It's easy for us to be kind to, to our teachers, to a Lama, to people we care for. Well, not always people we care for. They can become, very, very difficult for us to deal with and create many emotions for us. But the fact of the matter is, taking a look at an embodiment of this openness, of this expansive mind, in the sense that he has equal feelings. Now, we're not to that step yet, of course. We're not there yet. But he not only feels equanimity toward all beings, but based on that equanimity, he feels, love and compassion. So equanimity is not sitting inside one's home for the last year, let's say, and not seeing any people, and so feel I don't have any feelings about all these different people. that form of equanimity is based on a fogginess, an unconscious state. That's not the clear state of equanimity. Equanimity comes from wisdom. It comes from realizing that the enemies are not outside, but the enemies are within. They're within ourselves. And so when we do a practice of equanimity, and we do a practice of bringing them to mind and meditate, it's good for us to bring the feeling of dislike and then see, where does that come from? It comes from self-grasping. It comes from ego-grasping. It comes from the ignorance of believing there to be a real self inside when that's really here and really somebody there that's really an enemy, not based on us projecting onto them. This is not to say that people in the world do not do things which are bad, which create bad karma, which hurt people. But the fact of the matter is, can we develop that great attitude, the Mahayana attitude? Can that happen? Yes. Why? Take a look. We don't have to look and just see the Buddha back 2,600 years ago. We can look at the Dalai Lama and take a look at that. We can look at some of our other teachers and lamas and understand that state of mind is not only possible, but it's our inheritance. Again, we don't want this not knowing state that just doesn't know, I don't like you, or I do, so I just feel equal about you, just like I do about the person I like or the ones I dislike. It's out of some wisdom that begins to understand that we've created this environment of what we think we are and what we want and who we like, and we project that. If they were truly friends, enemies, they would never change. But every one of us, every single one of us, have had numerous experiences of friends turning into enemies, enemies turning into friends. All of us have. That's in our past. That's why we use that to awaken our wisdom, to awaken us to be able to recognize that. That's the fertile ground that allows us, to develop that love and compassion, to develop kindness as our religion. And we know that this is not easy. This is very, very difficult. That's why quite often Tibetans, when we've talked before in the last talk, I believe I introduced the idea of wishing bodhicitta. Wishing bodhicitta is that we know we're not the bodhisattva, we're not that enlightened warrior yet, but we wish to be. We see that that's the right path to be on. We wish to be there. We wish to get to, Wisconsin, or we know where we kind of want to go. We're not there. That's the wishing part of it. So we don't beat ourselves because we can't act that way, because we can't act that way. We can. I shouldn't say we can't. We can act that way, but most of the time we can't. Why can't we? Because our energy overpowers us. The karma has been so powerful, has been so strong, and that dynamic pull which creates these situations means that we cannot act necessarily the way we want to act. But we can wish to be that way. So that's good enough to begin with. That's a start. That's where we have to start with where we are at. If we want to hurt ourselves for not being, for not being that enlightened person now, we'll get no place, because we're again, pushing ourselves beyond our present capabilities. Our capabilities are unlimited, but within the moments, we have to have that compassion for ourselves, have to have that softness for ourselves. And I mean, I know for myself, when I used to do this meditation, I used to love to actually not even do it for me, but almost put myself in a third person and see somebody else reacting to my mother, who I love very much. And how I have understanding for what she's doing, where this person doesn't. And you begin to see where you can develop, understanding for what people are doing. If it's that hard for us, we find out about this possibility. If it's that hard for us to be able to be in that moment, that starts to open up the compassion to the others. We start to have warmth and understand the same thing. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. It's not as if, and sometimes they do know what they're doing. We have to be honest. On the path, there's going to be others that are on the path that know better in the sense intellectually, but have not been able to, we have not been able to integrate it yet. Because it takes this kind of development. So the ability to continuously awaken our mind and develop along the path and begin to, at the very early stages, we're not saying, okay, you have to love that person that you see as enemy. Okay, you don't have to love that person that you don't know at all, but you're beginning to see that it's not them. It's us. We're the projector. We're creating that movie onto them. And once we begin to do that, and once we begin to see that, that's what begins to create an earthquake into ego's world. Okay, so ego and mind, all of these are words that are very difficult. I don't even like to use them very much. But I use mind all the time because that's what people use. But I like stream of consciousness, because when we think of mind, we think of singular. So we think, my mind. So if that's my mind, that's me. That's how I have to be. No. There is no me there perceiving the world. There is an awareness. And that awareness is continuous, streaming, moving, never stopping for a moment. And it has, based on it, feelings, thoughts, and awareness. But when we misperceive and we grasp at something to truly be us, truly be a solid, real thing within us, then we build the world. And then it becomes easier to understand. Based on that, we have that, what we would usually call selfishness, but is used in Buddhist terms quite often, self-cherishing attitude. Because when we have that self-cherishing attitude, we think more for ourselves than we do for others. If we think more for others, if we cherish others more than ourselves, we create an unbelievable, a 9 or a 10 on the Richter scale shaking of ego's world, which doesn't like to deal with it, with this, because it's been tricking us. It's been fooling us. It's been basically saying, this is me, this is who I am. And it needs that to sustain itself. And it goes on dividing the world up into these categories which are self-made. There's no reality beyond us. So all of a sudden, when there becomes an attitude that begins to cherish others, more than ourselves, then when a situation arises, it's not painful to do something for somebody else because you care for them more. We know this if we have children or grandchildren or somebody very small. We immediately care more for them and want to take care of them. So it's there. That's there. But how does it go beyond that little world? Well, the only way it can get beyond that world to begin with is by realizing that all living beings throughout this universe and all other universe that might exist, throughout wherever, we're all part of this. We're all dependent on each other. We're all interdependent. All of our happiness and things depend upon others because of what people do. And it doesn't matter ordinary sense. And this is why this practice of developing bodhicitta, it's because you begin to equalize, and then you start to understand and start to understand how others are very kind. And again, this is not going back into looking at throughout time, that no beginning, and so reincarnation. This is saying we can see this, that there is nothing outside of us that absolutely makes that person our enemy. We have to put the final stamp of approval on that. You had mentioned before about different levels. Well, we have different levels. We obviously have some people we dislike more than others. All self-made. All made by ourselves. We say, I don't like that person, but I really don't like that person. Right? That person I can maybe get in a car and we can drive someplace. That person, don't put him in my car. Don't let me see them. This is our mind's creation. This is ego's creation, and ego is not any individual sitting inside of us. Scott, that's a name, Scott, that's inside there. It's a delusion. It's an illusion. It's been a magic show created by our mind and imprinted over and over and over again, which means that we have to react this way, whether it's to people or situations. I like this situation, I don't like that situation. All of this has been something that's arisen out of no place and tried to make something out of it. I have to make something out of it because otherwise I don't exist. I don't feel then. That's not true. That's an illusion too. So the necessity of coming up with equality, coming up with realizing in our mind equanimity based upon wisdom, not based upon dullness or ignorance. By the way, that dullness and ignorance is also with us just even in sitting meditation. When we're sitting in meditation and we begin to doze off or whatever, that creates ignorance. That's not meditation. We might sit there and think, oh, I just had periods of no thought. There's periods of no thought in between our thoughts, but then there's unconsciousness. That's what's going on. We're unconscious. So Buddha says, wake up. That's what enlightenment is. Awakening. Wake up. We wake up. We dissolve the negativity, and we accumulate, positive type of energy, and wake up. So this is what is done. At the beginning, we do this meditation, and we see the, indifferent persons, and many of them in front of us, and the people we dislike on our right, and the people we like on our left, and they're all over there. And at a certain point, we let our wisdom begin to create an equalness, toward them. Create some kind of equanimity. Break down those false barriers. We'll see they're false barriers. If there was really enemy, friend, indifferent there, we wouldn't be able to break them down. But we can break them down because the wisdom, the rikpa, the wisdom energy inside of us can start to begin to see things as they are, rather than our yellow sunglasses that make the world look yellow, jaundice. So that's the first start. That's what we do. We bring about this equanimity of mind. And then in the particular trainings on this, you go to the step of, remembering your kindness of your mother. Now, the mother, again, is not an absolute, has to be used. I had a grandfather that I was, I can remember when I was 5 years old, saying to him, I hope I pass away first. I hope I die first because it would hurt so much. I had so much love. I had that love for my mother and my father as well. But my point is that we begin to look at someone that we have such great love for. So, Tibetan Buddhists, it's within the prayers, for mother sentient beings. And by the way, I haven't said to you before, but there's a lot of times within the prayers, there's 3 different ways of praying and stuff, in a sense, for for all sentient beings. One way is that you wish for all living beings to reach enlightenment before you do. May I stay on that path and have that strength for every single one to become enlightened before I do. There's another one that's kind of like a boat-like, where you get there at the same time. May we all become enlightened at the same time. And then there's a third one, which is used a lot with many teachers I have and within their prayers, where may I become enlightened so I can benefit all others. And sometimes that's explained, so that's like if you wanted to help somebody because they're physically sick, you first need to be qualified. You have to become a doctor. Okay, so whatever suits, all 3 of them are phenomenal. If they're actual wishes within us, they're all very, very important. How do we get to that state is that when we see that person, if I would see my mother, for example, as I said, sitting inside a house that was on fire, I'd want to break into there no matter what the flames were. I wouldn't say, oh, I'm going to have some tea first and then I'm going to go in. I'm going to go now and bring them out. So it's the energy by seeing the, love that you have for whoever that person might be. Again, I'm saying this with mother, but it can be used with who has ever been very kind to us and brought about a lot of love, and shown us. I mean, the Tibetans go on explaining that when we're born, and I can see now, my daughter has a newborn baby born a couple months ago, and I had my other grandchild, and the mother, not for a second, is not trying to take care. That's what happened with us. They don't let go for a second trying to take care for us, no matter what it is. If it means them not eating, they'll make sure that we eat first. So we're able to use our natural type of reality, instead of somebody who just says, oh, I didn't ask to be born, so what? We don't want that kind of blockhead, iron head thoughts. We want warmth in our heart, be able to see that, oh my God, look at it's, they've given up everything. That person's given up everything so that I could even make it into my early years, learning to walk, talk, everything that goes on. What was spent, especially in this country, to take care of somebody and make sure you go on and then get an education. It's unlimited if we spend the time looking at that, and then we spend the time taking a look and see that person, and we understand that as nice as they are and as kind as they are, they have so much different pain going on. They worry about us, they worry about other things, and they don't necessarily even have a path out. And sometimes you can't even explain to them because it might not fit. So the next step when we're doing this, bodhicitta meditation, this enlightened attitude, this awakened attitude, we become equality. Then we try to remember kindness of our mother, and we can also, remember that, again, as I said, all beings, some people have to work very hard in order to bring us things that we can't survive. We would not survive without what many, many other people are doing. What does that mean? We're all interconnected. When we begin to move into the enlightened states of mind, into our open mind, the barriers are dropped. Just like we know how much we do for somebody, we begin to now know what others are doing for us and for everybody else and how it's connected. It reminds me of, like when I was watching, I think that first Star Wars came out in 1977, and that Death Star ship, Darth Vader just, took out where they came from, that one planet. And he, whatever he did, I can't remember, it was so long ago I saw it, but he reacted, and Luke said, "What's wrong? What happened?" to Obi-Wan Kenobi. He said, "There's been a disruption in the Force." Because the sensitivity to what's going on in the entire world around us becomes a reality for us. Because, again, we can't totally be happy while there's so much other pain and suffering going on. So this is something that begins to swell up inside and develop this kind of love and compassion inside of us. In Buddhist terms, love is, the wishingness and wanting happiness for others, and compassion is wishing them to not have suffering or the cause of suffering, to be free from them. And so this is something that, we can learn about, but it becomes natural once we begin to look into it as a reality. We're able to see, and even though the earth, as I've said before, is not a sentient being, or a tree is not a sentient being, although there's sentient beings that live inside of these places, but it makes a difference, because what is it doing to the entire, ecological type of forces taking place? If we're just worrying about ourselves, and so we're going to do something that's going to destroy, some land and property, and then take down trees and make money from that, and then the oxygen becomes... So what do we have? We have fires breaking out in California. We have earthquakes taking places. We have mudslides going on. Is that going to happen if people are really, thinking and caring about others more than themselves? Reversing the self-cherishing attitude, not trying to just get best for themselves, worrying about making money because I can make this little environment for myself, this perfect home. Well, as I've said before, the understanding of this human life, to use it in a proper way. And at the end of the life, we can't take that stuff with us. All we can take with us is how we've developed. All we can take with us is the good karma that we've created and the bad karma. That's all that we can take with us at that time. So how is it spent? Is it spent being so selfish and narrow-minded? And what about, there's most likely, we have brothers, sisters that have children, and they have children, and they're going to have to be brought up, and then they're going to have children. We don't care because we're going to be gone. No, that's it. That's it. When my body dies, I die. Well, in Buddhism, that's not true. You can't kill that stream of consciousness. That stream of consciousness goes on and on. And as our mind wakes up a little bit, it does become possible to remember back. It's hard enough for us now to remember yesterday, or at least for me it is, or remember back at the beginning of our life, but it is possible. And that's why younger people, sometimes when they're very young, we have people that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, begin speaking a language that's an ancient language. They get put under hypnosis and they begin to speak it. They never learned that language because the language wasn't around, but people know it as an ancient language. This stream of consciousness cannot be killed. The body can, dissolve into energy. The physical body, can deteriorate and then turn into something else, but the mind, the mental energy goes on. And when the mind becomes awakened and begins to see things in the proper way and have this kind of compassion, like I said, can we really imagine any of us acting that way to somebody coming and taking over our house, physically assaulting maybe our mother, our sisters, or whoever, destroying what was precious to us? We can't. It's so hard to look at. But we look at His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and he basically is, embodiment of love, embodiment of compassion. And that's what, shows us that that can be done. So these teachings, came from India to Tibet on this, developing equanimity, remembering the kindness of your mother, and then it goes on to the further steps as well into remembering, that kindness, for all other living beings. And so we're not doing that today. We're going to basically take this a little bit of step at a time, because this is quite a bit of, stuff for us to take in, and it's certainly not part of our nature. But when we look at it, it makes sense. It makes sense. So what we need to do then is that's why when we do we sit down, we quiet our mind, let our mind get quiet. When it's in kind of a quiet space, we can begin to do some of the analytical meditation, on equanimity, and start to bring this in, start to change us. It can change us. It can allow us to actually prepare ourselves for when we come in contact, with somebody. We might have people that we have to be in contact with all the time. And it's not easy, because every time I see them, I have to act that way because this is me, and they have to. And even if I'm not, even if I try to be nice, they might, because of their projection, they might not want to even give us the chance that we're actually saying or doing something nice. So again, we need to be able to have some kind of calmness, understanding, openness, understanding there's space there, and begin to learn to deal with the situations. There's always space. We don't, as I've said before, we don't create space. Space is lack of something solid taking up. Space is always there. There's space in the most solid things we have. You break down into it. There's no one solid light or light holder here. There's many atoms coming together, and it's all. As we begin to look in, there's different things that are into different parts, into other parts. There is no absoluteness in these different things, and so when we start to do what we're doing different types of meditations where we're doing things to, let our bodies begin to come back into balance. We're doing things for breathing and meditation, for dealing with our subtle energies, with opening up, letting our channels, be the subtle body and things. But the reality is the space is always there. There's always space. Because there's space. If there wasn't space, we couldn't move. I couldn't talk. Well, maybe that's better if I couldn't talk, but I couldn't talk. If there's not space, there's always space. So we'll leave that for now today, and hopefully we'll go on, next week, but we can take some questions now. If you'd like, if not.
Yeah, so I think who we are is like, or like experiences our gurus. This is how we develop ourselves, from the birth to education to the jobs and family. So our personality becomes so tight in that life experiences, and that's who we are. So those experiences are our gurus. Now you need to go somewhere to listen to something like what you were saying, to sort of realizing that we are too tightly wound, and we need to sort of
loosen up.
loosen up.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah, well, that's the meditation. It's very important in the meditation to be relaxed. And as we talked about one time before, meditation is like that guitar string. Music, so too tight it snaps, and too loose it become dull and slothful. So it needs to be a nice, gentle balance. But ultimately, we will be within total relaxation. There is a total relaxation element of our being. That is part of our nature, is to be relaxed, to be complete. So when we're doing some of our exercises before yoga exercises and things, we begin to see that it seems like something solid, but all of a sudden we sit there for a second, and it's not exactly what we thought. It starts to loosen for some reason. The physical body starts to loosen because there's all this tension taking place. There's a battle going on. Our shoulders up because we're uptight. That term comes from something. We're uptight. And that's that's what we are. I mean, that's a world we were, listen, it's no different. The people are like that. They were in Tibet too. We don't have to think they weren't, or in ancient India, until you become like Buddha. But along the way, you're right. We learn to open up and relax. And that has a spacious quality to it. It has a warm quality to it, which is like compassion. And so all these things we're doing is to kind of get to the reality rather than believing what we created for ourselves. So you're 100% right.
I kind of have a part A and a part B.
Okay.
So when we're talking about this is wonderful. And actually maybe the Dalai Lama's, their situation in Tibet's a good example, right?
Yeah.
So business is another good example. So it's like you can have this open, spacious quality, but when you do business, it can be, not necessarily aggressive, but that person's gonna try to get
the best they can.
The best they can, and you do too. And my way of doing business is everybody wins, but I am the boss, right? So I take my percentage or whatever, and sometimes the negotiation can come, and so it's like, if I led with my bodhisattva heart, I'd just be like, take what you want, no problem. But then that causes a problem, because now everyone's going to do it, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
So then I go into my more rational business thing. I'll be like, okay, well, what's your argument? Does it logically hold up? It doesn't hold up. Well, then I have to say no, because it's just not good business. It's not the way we do business.
Yeah, so, that's a very clear and very good picture or example of what you're using. And of course, that's one of the reasons why in the early part of teachings of the Buddha, there's right livelihood as far as what you do. But I can tell you for a fact that the Tibetans are fierce negotiators, okay? And there's maybe nobody was more fierce than Lama Yeshe. Okay, so there's a couple aspects to your question. First thing is it's compassion without wisdom, as I said last week, or the last time we were together, is the two wings on a bird or on an airplane. We need wisdom and method. Method is the compassion and the love, okay, and cherishing somebody more than oneself. Doesn't mean that you, as my brother, who is a heroin addict, means that I just give you money to go buy, more crack or more heroin, okay? There is an intelligence level of dealing, and first of all, not being run over for their benefit, but also it just means that you're actually more from the state of you're so open and so much not looking to take advantage of yourself that you might negotiate even better, because pure intelligence is able to deal, relative intelligence, knowledge and things is able to flow, and you're able to see how to deal with the situation. There might become the chance that you've actually opened up something in the other person where they also, so once you're like this, both are dug in, it's very difficult. What's the animals, not the yaks, but rams. Yeah, exactly, ramming each other and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, or like I said to you about going to the bazaar in India and smiling all of a sudden, and then they smile back, and the negotiation takes on a different tone. It might not work. It might not work. But I'll tell you one thing, you can never discount the fact that you might actually plant a seed for some other time for that person to deal with life differently, even if it's not in that time. So you don't make yourself a floor mat. That's not the idea. Okay? But if you need it to be, I mean, the beautiful Buddhist book by the Indian saint Shantideva, you know, when he says, please, if I must become a boat for those that need to cross a river, or if I must be medicine for those that need medicine, may I become food for those that are hungry. You know, you can get to the stage where actually, yeah, you can do things like that. You can let people do things because it's not able to, but you're not at that level yet. So you deal within the world the way that it is. But you can deal with it from a standpoint of some kind of intelligence and things, okay? And I just wanted to get back to, because Lama Yeshe, there was, sometime there was a guy, somebody that came to Kopan, and Lama had asked him what did he do, and he explained how back at home he was an actor. And Lama said, I'm an actor. I'm a great actor, something like that. Why is he an actor? Because out of emptiness, when people saw Lama Yeshe sometimes would look bigger than life, sometimes would be smaller. He changed whatever he could change from many different things, because there was no one fixed thing. There was not even a billion little Lama Yeshes. There was no Lama Yeshe. There was just wisdom that could come out. And that's how the Buddha's Dharmakaya expresses itself into the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya. The body is because it comes according to what's necessary, at time and things. But if, I never really felt anything that Lama Yeshe did was negative myself. It was phenomenal. Everything was just blow my mind always and things. But, the fact of the matter is that he did what was ever necessary. I'm going to just veer off for a second. Did any of you ever, because I read these and a couple of them come back, there's other forms of wisdom that have come up, but did you ever read those books by Carlos Castaneda?
Tried to.
Okay, yeah, they're not for everybody, but anyway, Carlos Castaneda was an anthropologist that wanted to go study with a Yaqui Indian in order to gain wisdom by using peyote and things, okay? So at a later stages and things, toward the end of the path, what's his name, Don Juan basically said, explained to him, these drugs were never necessary. They were just a particular path, just a particular way. And when he went to meet him one time, they had made a thing that in years to come, 5 years down the line, we'll meet in Mexico City. When he saw him in Mexico City, he was wearing like a suit and tie, sitting there. This was all a teaching for him, to be as you need to be at a time. Expressiveness. You can express yourself differently. Lama Yeshe could express himself any way that was necessary to give a teaching. Okay, so. If you think that somebody was going to take advantage of him in a negotiation, it never would happen. There's nobody out there sharp enough. I'll put it that way to you. Anyway.
I suppose that was what happened in my situation with a dear friend, and he asked for a little more, but it's more than I paid the other people. And I was like, as a friend, I just want to say, sure. But then my business guy came in, and I was like, wait a minute. And then I analyzed it, and I talked to him. It wasn't like an argument. But I was like, hey, these are the reasons why I think this is, like, we have to think about it. There's so many dimensions of doing that.
Yeah, but which is fine. That's it. That's all. You have to take a look. I mean, maybe you could have, or maybe you should have. It's hard to say, But again, it's.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, those two parts of me, because that other mind is sharp.
Yeah.
I wasn't mean, but I was like, it started out, I started analyzing. Oh, well, you can't do it that way because this to this. I think it's right. I just feel a little guilty.
I think the thing is that I think the important thing is like the most important thing, that the teachers teach us in basically is to look at the motivation of our mind. So whatever you say or whatever you do with people can be different. There's no set way what you should do. But what is set is that if it's not based on, some kind of self-cherishing attitude, if it's not based on, I'm going to do this because I want to get a better reputation. So there's a thing that creates, there's kind of like this demarcation as far as what's spiritual, what isn't, and things. So if you're doing things, based on gain and fame and things like that, or profit and loss and all these things, if you were looking in your motivation for doing them, those are fine. But they're ordinary thing. They're not spiritual. They might look spiritual. You might be doing something that looks like a spiritual practice, but it's not a spiritual practice if the mind behind that. And you can do ordinary things. You can be an ordinary person working with those people, or working on the streets. But if your mind is developing bodhicitta, then whatever it is you do, if your mind is becoming pure, the action becomes pure. The mind is pure, the body is pure, the speech becomes pure. And it still doesn't mean that it's not times when you have to say, like to a child, wait, don't run in the street. You have to raise a voice. Mahakala, Chenrezig, the Avalokiteshvara, the wrathful thing has to do, because that otherwise they're going to run into the street and get killed, or get hurt, get crippled. What we do is not the important thing. It is important, but the most important is what's in our mind. So.
It's interesting, because if you think about business, it is a lot about gain or loss. I mean, at the end of the day, right? Either business is gain.
Yeah,
but then you look at it more holistically, and everybody has to win. So that's why I think.
Yeah, but doing things to make money. Making money is not the problem. Samsara is not outside of our mind. Samsara is our mind. It's not the house, it's not the car, it's not the business, it's not what you're doing, okay? But how are you doing it? If you're, I'll give you a quick example. Back in 1987, I was, at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, at CME, which is, of course, an exchange, based on. Okay, I don't want to get into it now.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, there was a stock market crash in '87, and the markets were kind of dull and things. So, my friend Brad, who you've met before, his family owned a car dealership right down the street, south of here on Broadway, a Toyota place. Okay, so I went to sell cars, part time. I'd go to work, go into the exchange, and I'd go there at night. So I was salesman of the month. One person on a Saturday that other people didn't even want to talk to, they labeled him something. I sold him 3 cars that one day and things. The bottom line is that I was not there to take everything I could from them. Okay, I was there to make a fair deal where they wanted a car, I'd give them a good car, a Toyota, which was a great car and things, and we could do it at a price where I'd make little bit of money off of it, not a lot off of it, but it would be, something. Whatever I felt fair is the way that I dealt it. And so when I dealt with those people, it was like I dealt with when I coached children and things. You feel something for them. So, rather than entering the negotiations as a battlefield, it's more of a romance in some ways. So.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. You said you had a part B. I don't know if I messed you up or you lost it.
I took off so much time. The part B was like, how much of the mindfulness, the present moment, helps this whole process. Like, because you have things your mind's thinking of the past or something in the future, but mostly for me it tends to be more, how was my interaction yesterday with that person, or how that was strange or whatever. So how much does the mindfulness, it's sort of like the big deal, keeping your mind just in your body from moment to moment, just in this present moment. That's like deep practice, right?
Well, it's like I said to you, if we decide to today walk to New York, we're going to see a lot going on along the way, see things planted and this and that. And if we drive, we're not going to see as much, it's going to go fast. And if we take an airplane, we're going to see almost nothing. Our minds are moving at supersonic speed. So mindfulness is not something that's made up and is outside of ourselves. Mindfulness is what our real natural state is to begin with. Our mind is awake, it's fully aware. Time loses, there is no time, first of all. Time is a man-made concept. You'll find sometime you could be sitting in a meditation and within a moment, you could know many things at once because there becomes no time, because it slows, I always think of that movie Matrix, and things. That was using like martial arts because it slows so much. I know your arm's coming this way, so it's like this, and I know to go like this. The mindfulness doesn't mean that you are not able to function because you're only right here at this moment. You actually begin to function better. You can only do what you're doing. If you're doing your dishes, you're doing them, but if you're doing your dishes and your mind's in some other places, you might break the dishes, you might not clean them completely.
Yeah, and you kind of do get attached to some karma too, maybe, too. If your mind's thinking about something, you're having an emotional thought about it. So to cut through that, you go back to washing the dishes, just fully present.
Well, the point is that karma comes from your mind. Okay, so yes, can you daydream and all of a sudden daydream why you really dislike somebody and want to say something bad to them, hurt them? Of course. So that's why developing mindfulness, awareness, begins to give you the ability to not do that, to be where you are at the time.
Or even reverse it, right?
Yes, exactly. Because really that's talking about daydreaming. Daydreaming, dreaming, falling asleep in your meditation, those are not awakening you. They're making your mind more unconscious. Being where you are, your mind is waking up, is more aware, and is able to deal with life in a very precise manner. All of a sudden, you begin to see that the physical world around us is really only made up of colors, of lights. The physical world that's all that it is. And so, our mind is not able to see that as of yet, but is it possible? Yes, we could see that actually. That's what it is. So right now it's just one big solid blur, and we believe everything is there and is solid. So. All right, well, we'll try this again next week.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.